Hello and welcome to the second episode of EK Expo CES 2024. Yesterday was a blast. We showcased some of our latest and greatest EK Quantum liquid cooling solutions and even unveiled some new products. The EK Quantum Velocity 2 Edge Special Edition water blocks. You can find the link to the previous episode in the description below. Day 2 is reserved for taking a walk on the wild side of our QuantumX projects. Our advanced liquid cooling solutions from the EK Pro line, fully liquid cooled 8 GPU systems by the EK Fluidworks, and much more. We'll also find out if Joe managed to build his impossible QuantumX PC. Let's get to it.
It's day 2, welcome back to the suite. Today it's all about our advanced liquid cooling and more so our QuantumX stuff. Joe, what is QuantumX?
So what sets QuantumX apart from regular quantum products is that everything was derived from its original project where we made a video series for YouTube. Here we see the second and the first successful project that was transitioned to a product, and that's the PS5. So you can go back and see all of the content we made for that. There were 3 episodes. Quite interestingly, we destroyed the first version and repeated the whole project, and we eventually arrived at this super build. It hadn't been to a show ever before, so we brought it along with us to CES this year.
Yeah, it's great to see, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of information about this already on YouTube, so go ahead and check that out. And I also see this, which I've seen before. What's this one?
Yeah, so this is the next product that followed up in the QuantumX series. After we did the PS5, we had a collaboration with Linus Tech Tips where we produced very bespoke parts for a desk that went out to Mr. Beast associate Carl Jacobs. And it had a very elaborate distro plate with tubes inside it. In that case, they were heat exchangers, but they inspired us to make a distribution plate in which you can build your own tubing routes inside as you see fit.
So basically that shows how QuantumX can evolve into something that is useful for the public then, in theory.
Right, yeah, so it started with pushing a new technology, a new kind of visual fashion on the Linus video, and then it moved forwards into something that anyone can use in any build. The original one was huge.
And these are already available, so we can go ahead and check them out on the website. And then I do like the look of this. What is it?
Right, so this brings us into the next QuantumX project, which you saw a very small extract from yesterday. This is the QuantumX no case. Okay,
it's no case, it's not a case then.
Right, so the principle that we started with was that it should be completely hidden by the build. So when you put the build on it, install all the components, you can't see the case anymore.
Okay, and it looks super heavy. Like, how heavy is that?
Since we're in America and imperial units, it's about 3 pounds.
Oh, right, okay.
1.4 kilos.
Yeah, that's definitely super heavy, right?
Yep, but it does get a lot heavier when you put the distribution plate on, which is the very first dual loop distro plate from us.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the distro plate, because I've noticed it's dual loop, it's got dual pumps, it's a big chunky boy. What's going on there?
Yeah, quite uniquely, because the distro plate was going on the outside of this case and not the inside, we didn't really have any size constraint. So this is one of the biggest distro plates that we've made. It's similar in size to the 1000D we used to have. That also had dual pumps, but they were configured in series. In this, they're configured in dual loops because there was space to fit them around each other. So we have a CPU loop that connects to the top radiator and a GPU loop that connects to the backside and the bottom radiator.
Awesome. And just briefly, speaking about radiators, With it being such a small case and so light, I should say, such a light case, how many radiators does it fit?
So it's a light case, but it turns into a big build.
Yep.
And the layout fits 3 P420 radiators. Okay. Potentially some X420s as well.
Okay, nice. If the camera would actually pan around a little bit to the right, you'd actually see the finished build. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you that today. You'll have to come back tomorrow and watch the next video. Now, Joe's going to have to run around the back of the camera and head over to our new section, which is the Fluidworks and the Pro Series. Joe, go through them products for us and tell us what we've got.
Throughout the last quarter of 2023 and into 2024, we're working on completing the EK Pro lineup of products. So these are intended for professional and industrial deployment. And in the past, we maintained a comprehensive lineup of industrial grade CPU water blocks for larger sockets, as well as typical desktop sockets, and a complete lineup of industrial workstation and data center graphics cards. Seen here today, we have a H100 80 gig copper inox GPU block, as well as its aluminium counterpart, which is used inside our systems and various industrial deployments. And we also have the more conventional RTX A6000 block in nickel-plated copper and inox. The CPU blocks that we have here are LGA 4677 in rack mount format. So this has G8 ports on its side, and we have an AMD SP5 block in desktop mount or higher thickness of rack format. So this has its G1 1/4 inch ports on the top side. One new expansion of the EK Pro line that we see here today is a combination of a pump, a reservoir, and a manifold. This is the middle size that we offer. We also released a smaller version, and there is a larger one to come. This one has 3 sets of 4 ports, which are configured in semi-parallel. So you can run 2 identical GPU blocks, 2 identical CPU blocks, and 2 radiators, or a typical series combination of the aforementioned blocks. You can also skip parts and go directly from the first outlet to the last inlet, and in that way you just make a simple series loop. So it's a very versatile product, and it's very compact, easy to fill, easy to mount, and well suited to typically quite compact industrial cases. It also includes a drain tube with a quick disconnect fitting by default. So you just snap on the provided tube and go ahead and drain the loop. All of these products together are available as individual pieces. They're also available as conversion kits for existing industrial systems, and they're available in Fluidworks systems. Here we see an X7000 rack mount Fluidworks system, and we also have desktop systems and various sizes of system for specific purposes. So this one has 5 graphics cards. It can also be increased up to 7 in this configuration, dual redundant power supplies, a pair of 360mm radiators. So this is a very serious spec machine.
Hi everyone, Attila again here reporting from HQ, and this time we are looking at GGF or Stuart's latest build. It's built in the Jewel Beast lithium EKs. It's a white version, and Stuart has also been using the white 4090 Strix block, and he has modified the CPU block. So Stuart has taken the satin titanium CPU block top and modified the light guide so that it works with the white accent parts, so it's a satin titanium white CPU block. The build uses satin titanium fittings, parallel tubes, including cooling the VRM section on the motherboard. It's very clean and aesthetically pleasing, and we would like to thank Stuart again that he worked with us for this show, and we will continue working with him in the future as well. Back to you.
Wow! What a great build by Stuart from GGF. But now, let's see if Joe managed to build the QuantumX no-case build. We all know that he's a true magician, but can he pull this one off? Can he make the case disappear? Let's find out.
So now we've built up all the cases, it's time to do a build. We've got... Where's the case gone? Where's the case? Oh, it's here. Great. Now we've found a case, we can get on with all the other hardware. We've got 3 P420s, 2 of which are going on the GPU, which is a RX 7900 XTX Red Devil, and one last P420 for the CPU. We've found a 13900K CPU block. Another new surprise, so as well as the RGB pump covers, we now have a very special Velocity 2 Edge edition. We'll see more of that when the lights come on, but that's a really cool block. We have Team Group T-Force TDDR5 RGB memory. It's very triangle-y and sort of suits the look of the case. We have surprisingly some very old Vario pumps because I don't want to make PWM cables go across this case. So I can just set the speed on those and extend the power cables and hide it a little bit better. Fans, we have the 140 FPTs. They're all DRGB, so I'm gonna have fun with those little cables around this build, and I think that's gonna be the hardest part of this build. Big cables, we have a Silverstone PSU, so the best pinout available. They're all just gonna be straight wires, really good looking, not too many like splices or nasty things to make. And that's partly also why I tried to find a Radeon so that it has 8-pin PCIe connectors and not the high power ones. Motherboard is a Asus ROG Maximus Z790 Hero. Pretty much chose it because it's completely black and it's also ATX. And on the case, I don't want to eat up too much of the empty space with a really wide motherboard. So a nice like true ATX motherboard will float the best. It will, you know, have the best view around it, and it's just big enough to hide the case without being like so big that you don't see the empty space. And that's pretty much it. One thing we don't have on the table is fittings and tubing, because there are even more surprises to come. So now all 3 radiators are mounted in the chassis. My plan is to join all 9 in series and also create some little spurs for the pumps and for the RGB and the distro plate. We'll come back to that, but it's going to be a tough part of the build because these FPT fans, the links between them won't be able to handle, definitely not under 5 volts, enough current for all of the RGBs, because the pump covers each have almost 30 diodes. The distribution plate has a 0.5 meter strip. Every fan has 9 diodes, so it's too much for the 5-volt rail to go through the 22 gauge wire of each fan. So I'll have to basically make a wiring loom for it that follows this circuit. So the signal cable will run through every OmniLink device, and there'll be little spurs to join on the RGB for the front things, and then power will have to go in stages. So 1 wire to the first bank, 1 wire going around them to the next bank of fans, and 1 to the last, just to keep the current high enough. And then the same for 5-volt for the RGB. Of course, we'll all need their own power source alongside it, but I think that I can run them all from here on the top corner of the motherboard or from the power supply, because the power supply is going to be facing up on the back, so I can run directly from this top corner. That's the easiest to access for a PWM input, for a RGB input, and for the power input. So I'll run from there across the top fans, down the side fans, and along the bottom fans, and pick up every other device along the way. So now we need some hardware. Time to put the graphics card block together, set the GPU bracket in the right place, put the motherboard tray on, and get the motherboard on, and then we'll keep progressing. It looks very nice though. It doesn't twist much, not more than a normal steel case, but that way it's a little wobble. But I think when the ports stick out and the distro's pressed on them, that'll make a difference. Okay, so the graphics card was in. It took a little bit longer than normally it would to mount the graphics card block, because I had some quite ambitious ideas of connecting the LED strip to the internal header of the card. Because this is a red Devil, I was able to go and steal some parts from a liquid Devil and splice the 2 cables together, so the vector strip is plugging into the header where the RGB would on the stock cooler or the liquid Devil. So I don't have any cables going out from the card, which when they would be from here, which is, you know, a very visible part on this build, and I have no motherboard tray to hide that cable behind or anywhere really to go with it. It's nice that it's contained. It just hooks inside the backplate. So it's time to move on to the motherboard. And there we go. The entire board's together. M2 drives are inside, memory's on, CPU mounted, and the very first edge block to be mounted on a motherboard. And I did extremely well with the cable. It was a perfect length to run behind the M2. I had to take the M2 out and squeeze it behind, and then it runs under the heat sinks and nicely into the bottom slot. So that saved me some soldering. And we can put this into the build. I'll probably take out the graphics card on the entire bracket now, and then put that back when we are ready with the distribution plate. Well, that really couldn't have gone any better whatsoever. Might have looked a little bit slow, but that was way faster than I expected it to be. Nothing fell off, no screws came out, no standoffs fell off. So perfect, especially when using the magnet. I could just push the nut inside every little hole that the motherboard had, all went back together, and now I can move on. Amazing, looks like it should. Let's go. You can tell that's heavy when it goes in. Okay, so that's it. Everything is now on the case pretty much. All the hardware is there. We got the power supply on the back. It was really easy to fit with the graphics card gone. And then I, of course, put the GPU back. So the Red Devil is up front and everything is looking fantastically good together. The triangular shapes of the case together with the Velocity 2 edge. Even the memory, it really like the angles of the RAM follow the silhouette of the block, and it works really nicely. I'm very happy with the color palette so far, and luckily one thing just came in. I can't put the distro plate on yet because I still don't have any tubes, but what I do have is this box of rose gold fittings. These are the first Torque rose gold fittings. I've got everything I need for the whole build. So there's lots of HDCs. This is the biggest. This is a double rotary 90. There's lots of parts to that, so that looks amazing. I've got all my 90s. I think I even have some spares, so let's get into these. So now they're all open, that's one quite large job done. They look absolutely excellent. They're real rose gold plating with actual gold inside, but they look quite coppery. They look like a really bright, perfect copper. So I hope they'll be a good fit for the otherwise very black build. Okay, so that's all the fittings that I can actually fit in the build right now. I still have a whole bunch left over, which are for the distro plate side, and there are a few spares there still. I don't know what configuration of offset fittings are needed for this particular motherboard. I think it's offset 3, but I'm not certain. So I'm gonna wait until the distro plate is there and I can check with the tube that it's perfect. Otherwise, everything looks nice. I already really like the color of these fittings in the build. Hopefully, with cables, with LEDs, with coolant, it all starts to look even better. The big cable, which connects all of the RGB and all of the fans, is actually done and it's in the build already. So that is as much as the tiny cables as will be visible at the end, which I'm very happy with. Practically, you can just see where the signal wire goes out from the motherboard, and that's going to get hidden inside the EPS connector. Everything's linked to the power supply and it pretty much works. It's time to start the big power cables. So there's going to be obviously a 24 pin, 2 8-pins and 3 8-pins for the GPU. So that will look like another 24 pin. And my idea, if it works visually, was to make a gradient that is very reminiscent of a soon to be popular sunset at some point in the next 2 years, with yellow, orange, pink, purple, and finally blue. So it makes a very cool gradient. And then I'll mix in some neutral color. I've not decided which yet, but I'm deciding between black, shade 19, or carbon BTI. These are all MDPCX colors and all MDPCX sleeving parts and tools that I'm going to be using, and that's what gets nice results. The actual layout of the cables is going to be quite simple. I'm going to attempt to keep them very tight to the motherboard so they don't kind of go up and hit the fans and they don't sprawl out into the build, but I'll just make them as short and tight as they can be. And hopefully it looks pretty good. So a few moments later, or in other words, 2 or 3 days, all of the power cables are now sleeved and done and in the build. So it was pretty straightforward with this power supply. They're all straight wires, so no splits to make, and I could be really, really fancy with the combination of colors, and they flow nicely around into the power supply and like keep the pattern. All of the patterns match in the back and in the front, so I'm really happy there. The hardest one was the GPU cable, because it actually gets longer from left to right. On the front side of the build, the yellow cable is on the left, and on the back side, the yellow cable is on the left. So because they cross over each other, it means the inside cable is very short and the outside cable is much longer, and I had to make every wire a specific length. But the 24 pin, because it goes up and the 8 pins just go over, they're all the same length. They were really fast. And after that, I did also sleeve the pumps. I put new wires on them, extended them the whole length of the build, then sleeved them, threaded it all through and inside all the other cables that are there. And I've kind of cable tied everything inside the chassis. I've also pre-installed the LEDs, so they are cable tied inside and they should come out in just the right place to go inside the pump covers. If they're a bit too long, I can push it in. The pump covers are on because the wire has to go through them, so they're on already. And the next step is to mount the distro.
What a truly remarkable and groundbreaking build by Joe. I can't wait to see it in its full fame and glory in the next episode of EK Expo CES 24. Today we had loads of fun talking about EK's advanced liquid cooling solutions for various computing systems. We can't wait to see you again tomorrow. We'll dive deep into some insanely cool builds that will surely blur the line between PCs and art. Until then, stay cool with EK.